How's it going, everybody? My name is Chaz Addison, and welcome to the very first episode of the Flashin podcast. And if the title of the podcast doesn't give it away, this podcast will mostly talk about both of the DC CW shows, The Flash and Arrow. There will be a new episode of the podcast every Thursday afternoon, giving me time to watch the new episodes of each show every week and develop my thoughts and put them onto a podcast and edit everything. The podcast will be available on SoundCloud as well as my YouTube channel, so wherever you're listening, I really appreciate it. The main reason I wanted to do this podcast was because I'm a huge fan of both of these shows, and I really wanted to start a great conversation with other fans. That's just how much I love these shows. Now, I want to preface this by saying I never really read the comics of either of these. Maybe one day in the future I'll go into why I've never been able to read the comics until recently. I'm currently reading some of the new 52 comics, which I'm really enjoying. But I don't know a lot of the backstories about these characters, pretty much only what's shown in the show. So if you have read the comics and you're a super hardcore DC fan, I want to please ask you to be nice about things. I understand that I don't know everything, and if you read the comics, you know more than me about these characters. That I'm not trying to prove how much I know or anything like that. I really just want to start a conversation, everyone can enjoy it, and yeah, I just kind of want to get that out of the way. I understand, since I didn't read the comics, I know less than some, but this podcast mainly focuses on the TV shows and not the comics, so I'm hoping my knowledge of the shows will be enough for your enjoyment. So let's get started talking about the third episode of Season 1 of The Flash, titled Things You Can't Outrun. Quick synopsis of the episode. As Barry and the team at Star Labs work to capture Kyle Nimbus, aka The Mist, a dangerous new metahuman with toxic gas powers, they revisit the painful night the particle accelerator exploded and killed Caitlin's fiancée Ronnie. Meanwhile, Joe decides to finally visit Henry in jail after all these years. But things take a dangerous turn when Kyle shows up looking to punish Joe for arresting him years ago. Meanwhile, Iris and Eddie continue to hide their relationship from Joe. So after watching the episode, my initial thoughts were, another great episode, the third great episode in a row, and I'm just really loving the Flash series, and I'm super excited to where it's going to go in the future. We also just got news that the Flash finally got renewed, well, not renewed, but it got its full season order. Before this, we weren't sure if the CW were going to be giving it a full 22, 23 episodes, but now it's official. There will be a full season of The Flash, and hopefully more than one full season, because it seems like a lot of people are enjoying the show, and I'm one of those people. But let me list off a few of my thoughts from this episode. Right off the bat, they had kind of a Last of Us reference when Barry and Iris were outside of the theater, and Barry mentioned the ant zombies that are affected by the mushrooms and stuff. I don't know why, just being a super Last of Us fan, I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoy the chemistry between Iris and Barry. I think it's really great how you can tell that Barry really wants to be with Iris, but Iris just doesn't feel that way at all. Also in this episode, we got some flashbacks back to the night when Star Labs started up the particle accelerator. We also got some backstory from Caitlin and how her fiancé passed away that night. Her fiancé, played by Stephen Amell's cousin, I believe, Robbie Amell. I'm hoping to see him more later in the season because I'm pretty sure he's going to be coming back. But it was just great to get some backstory about how exactly she lost Ronnie, and what exactly everyone at Star Labs went through that night. Also, this episode, we got a lot more scenes of just Caitlin and Barry together, and I think those two have a really good chemistry together, and because it's a CW show, they kind of make it seem like every boy and girl or whatever, they just want to be in a relationship, but I can seriously see Caitlin and Barry being in a relationship later in the season. I really enjoyed the metahuman villain this episode, The Mist, Kyle Nimbus, played by Anthony Carrigan. I think he did a great job, but the one thing I do not like about this series is how it's kind of going into the weekly villain type of thing. I think Arrow struggled with that in their first season as well. Then they kind of realized that you need a big baddie of the season, and I'm sure the Flash is going to have one by the end of the season, and it's going to be great. But as of right now, they're kind of doing the weekly villain thing, which is cool because you get to see a lot of villains, but I think it also takes away from the villains because they're here 1 second and they're gone within an hour. So it's kind of a shame that we're not getting more of these villains, because I think the Mist is a really cool villain and a really cool character that can be explored, but he's gone. Well, he's not really gone. He's in the metahuman prison, which is actually the particle accelerator in Star Labs, which I think is a great way for them to just, I'm kind of thinking of it as like an insectarium, where it's just a bunch of these insects for display, but they're not insects, they're metahumans. So I think by like the end of the season, there's just going to be a stockpile of metahumans that you can walk down the hall past and be like, oh yeah, I remember him, I remember him, I remember him. I think it's going to be super cool, and I really like the way they're going with that. Also, we got some more scenes with John Wesley Shipp in this episode, which if you didn't know, he played the Flash in the original television show. And any scene with him and Barry, it's just, I know he's not the Flash anymore, but it just feels like the Flash and the Flash are meeting. And in this episode, he got to actually see the Flash, and Barry did this super cool thing to hide his identity from him. He kind of vibrated his face, so it really blurred his face. That was an awesome thing, and I really enjoyed that. And lastly, we got some more scenes of Dr. Wells and some of his backstory. One, he's scary. He's scary as fuck. And I think he might be from the future. Just, during the flashback, when they were starting the particle accelerator, he said something along the lines of, I feel like I've been waiting centuries for this day, and I kind of think that's just a little hint saying, yeah, he's not really from this time period. And every time he goes and he touches that wall and the door opens, something crazy is going to happen. It seems like every episode they're going to show a little bit more of him at the very end, just to tease you a little bit. This episode was him watching Barry get struck by the lightning, and I just thought it was very well done, and that's a great way to just get people excited for the next episode, because it just adds some mystery to it, and it adds some excitement that makes you want to come back next week and watch the next episode. So overall, I really enjoyed this episode of The Flash. I cannot wait for next episode. Alright, moving on to Arrow Season 3, Episode 3, titled Corto Maltese. Quick episode synopsis. Oliver decides it's time for Thea to come back to Starling City, so he packs for Corto Maltese, where Felicity has traced Thea's whereabouts. Lila asks Diggle to go with Oliver because one of her field operatives, Mark Shaw, has gone dark in Corto, and she'd like him to look into it. Feeling responsible for Thea's departure, Roy joins Oliver and Diggle on the journey. Shaw double-crosses Diggle, putting numerous Argus targets, including Lila, at risk. Meanwhile, Laurel meets Ted Grant, and Felicity adjusts to her new job. So right off the bat, we had some awesome Thea and Merlin flashbacks, and I really like the chemistry between these two. Then we see Team Arrow go on the road over to Corto Maltese. It was really refreshing to get the team out of Starling City. I'm not saying that it was getting stale or anything, but it's always interesting to see the characters go somewhere unfamiliar, and I really enjoyed that about this episode. It really felt like it turned things on its head. We finally get some glimpses of Laurel in the early stages of becoming the Black Canary. She decides to join a boxing gym after Oliver tells her that he won't train her. And she also gets her ass kicked. And I was a little skeptical about Laurel becoming the Black Canary, but I'm really happy with the way that they're working her into it, and the Laurel character has just done a complete 180 since the last season. Finally, we get to see Diggle do something again. I think Diggle is an amazing character, and sometimes I think he's underused, but he actually got to get into the action this episode, and anytime that happens, I am very happy. One thing I want to mention, Thea, or her actress's name, Willa Holland, is so beautiful. I have the biggest crush on her, and she cut her hair, and she just looks so good. But we get to see her and Merlin training, and we get to see the early stages of him training her, and he beats the shit out of her, which is kind of messed up, kind of hilarious, but I like the way he's going at it. Thea is going to be an amazing character later in the season. I really like where they're going with it. We get to see Felicity going into her new job at Queen Consolidated. She gets a big office. She gets her own assistant. Her and Palmer, I really like their chemistry. And Palmer, I think, is going to be great. I hope whatever they're doing with him, I hope they just keep on track, because whatever they're doing with him is awesome. I love the character. I love the actor. And him and Felicity just have a great chemistry. I know I say that a lot about characters, but it's true. Those two just really work together. And I'm really interested to see what Palmer does with Queen Consolidated. Like I said, Laurel got her ass beat, and I was really expecting her to tell Detective Lance about Sarah, because it's weird to think that he doesn't know about her yet. I actually forgot that he didn't know about her yet. And I was expecting her to tell him in the hospital, but I don't know. It's going to be so heartbreaking when she finally tells him. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm also not, because that scene is just going to be so sad to watch. But one of my favorite things about this episode was when Ollie made the makeshift bows for the big fight battle. It was so cool the way they showed him making it. It's like Oliver MacGyver. I really enjoyed that. And the fight scenes in this episode were great. They're great in every episode of Arrow. But Ollie just goes freaking ham with the gun. He has an aimbot, and it's awesome. When he turns her on, he's like, I never said I didn't know how to use a gun. Just really well done. All the fight scenes in this episode were great. Speaking of fight scenes, Thea and Merlin fight towards the end of the episode, and I think that fight scene might have been one of the coolest they've done in this show. Just the swords and everything. I don't know why, but I just really enjoyed that fight scene. It might be because Willa Holland was involved, but I'm not going to say that. And finally, the kind of tease at the end of the episode, we finally see Laurel accepting to go into the boxing ring with the trainer, and she's going to start training with him because, like I said, Oliver refuses to do so. And at the very end of the episode, Nisa comes back, and she is pissed. Pretty sure she doesn't know Sarah's dead yet. And that's going to be another heartbreaking scene when she finds out, because you could tell she really loves Sarah. She really cares about Sarah, and she'll do anything for Sarah. So when she finds out that Sarah died, it's going to be super sad. And I think that is what's going to bring Ra's al Ghul to Starling City. She's going to not know what to do, and she's going to call Daddy, and shit's going to go down. So there's a lot to look forward to in Season 3 of Arrow. I cannot be happier with where they're going in this season. I thought after Season 2, it'd be kind of hard for them to step up, but so far, Season 3 is looking like it's going to be one of the best seasons they've ever put out. So, overall, guys, I really enjoyed both Arrow and The Flash this week. Surprise, surprise, that happens every week. The podcast was a little short this week, just because I'm kind of still getting used to everything, but I will make them longer in the future. Please, wherever you're watching this, leave a comment so we can get this discussion going, because like I said, that's what this podcast is all about. I want to give a special shout out to Cade, who runs a YouTube channel with me, which if you're watching this on YouTube, you're on that channel. He did an amazing job designing a logo for the podcast. I really like it. I think you guys will too. Thank you so much, guys, for listening to the first ever episode of Flash and Arrows, and look forward to another episode next week. Thanks again.